Welcome, everybody. I know you guys will continue to roll in for a few minutes. That's my cat's tail. Uh, Welcome to our final webinar of the year. It is Incremental and Selective Restoration of Architectural Gems. So I will get into a little bit more of the detail of it, but I wanted to remind everybody that we're going to be recording this. So even if you do roll in a little bit late, or you didn't take a note on something, or you had a question that was sort of answered along the way, don't worry. You can watch this on our website afterwards, along with all of our webinars. So it's a really, really great resource to go back to and just check out all the other topics too you might have missed. So go to our website at chicagobungalow.org, and you can find them all there. Tonight's webinar, we're going to be covering the beautiful woodwork hidden under layers of paint that you have in your home, most likely. And look at the question of, if you're restoring it all at once, it's too expensive for a lot of you. And so Jeff's going to break down how to deal with an architectural gem that you think would be stunning if you were able to focus on just that in your home, and what it takes to actually recover it to its original splendor. So Jeff Ediger is the founder of Oak Brothers Historic Restoration, and I will be properly introducing him in a moment. Just for people who joined, again, we're going to be recording this tonight. Jeff's going to speak for about 45 minutes. Put any questions that you have along the way in the Q&A at the bottom, not in the chat, but in the Q&A. It's a little question mark in the box down there. Angela always, sends a message so you guys can see where to do that. Just hold on to your questions. I will be getting to them at the end. We're going to do a session after Jeff gets through his entire presentation. So about 45 minutes of talking, and then as many questions as we can handle before 7 p.m. When we'll close for the evening. So I would like to introduce Jeff properly. Prior to Oak Brothers Historic Restoration, Jeff Ediger had an interior house painting business for 14 years, working primarily in the Hyde Park and Kenwood neighborhoods. In 2009, Oak Brothers Historic Restoration was formed as a partnership between Jeff and Art Perkins, who brought more than 30 years of experience restoring antique furniture. Since Jeff's apprenticeship with Art, he's gone on to develop both his hand and machine woodworking skills, mostly through on-the-job training and by partnering with other skilled craftspeople. Now responsible for running the business of Oak Brothers, Jeff works in concert with a small team of highly skilled woodworkers with a shared appreciation for preserving and restoring vintage and historical architectural wood. Jeff's been a friend of the Chicago Bungalow Association for many, many years. He's a very fabulously philosophical man, so I'm sure he'll love answering your questions at the end. Don't be shy. And without further ado, Jeff, if you are ready, we can pull you up here. Just need, there we go.
Great. Well, thank you, Carla. I'm delighted to be here. I realized this is my first webinar. I've never done a webinar before, and I was thinking about it the other night, and I realized, oh my God, I won't be able to hear them laugh at my jokes. So it's a new experience, but there are other positives to it. So let me see how to share my screen, and we can get started.
And any tech issues that might come up, Jeff, just know we're in the back here, so.
Okay.
And let's see. Yep, you're good. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, great.
So maybe you've heard this joke before. The question is, how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time. So that seems to apply to restoration. You've got a whole building that to restore and maintain, and it can be pretty overwhelming. So how can you break that down into manageable chunks, but it still contribute to the restoration of the overall to the whole dwelling? So I'm going to start out with these three words: incremental, selective, and restoration, and we'll work through the what I mean by those, and in the process, talk about different kinds of projects that you can take on. So importantly, restoration is more than repair. To repair something is to fix what's broken. So if we were going to repair these are French door windows. Strange title. They are full-length door-like French doors, but they are often positioned as windows, and there are a lot of this in Chicago area. So if we were going to repair this, we might scrape down the paint and clean it up, maybe fill a few holes or something, and then slap on a coat of paint. Well, that's repair work. That's not restoration. Restoration is to bring something back as close as possible to its original condition while preserving the ennobling effects of aging. So when we restored these doors, we did not just scrape them down and painted them. We took them back to the shop, broke them, stripped off all of the wood, all of the paint, and took out all of the glass and repaired the frames as they needed, and bedded the glass and glazed it and cleaned the hardware, and came back to the job site and cleaned the window jambs, and then we repainted them, and this is what they look like when they're finished. Very inviting windows, and certainly a far cry from that. So, by definition, restoration recovers and enhances architectural integrity. So let's get a definition of that in there. Architectural integrity is the original character and features of a building as designed by the architect and or in keeping with the historical period in which it was built. So if restoration involves bringing something back to its original condition and it's an original element in the architecture, then it is going to contribute to this overall quality of a building, that it has its original integrity to it. So then this kind of gives us some principles and guidelines, because the title of this is incremental and selective. So it's not just arbitrary restoration. What you want to do is choose something that was going to give you the most bang for the buck. Um, so it's going to, a good candidate for that is something that in fact does restore the architectural integrity, and the more comprehensively so it does that, the better. And I'll explain how that happens. Um, and also it is, I am advocating for restoration rather than repair. So choose an architectural gem. So what is an architectural gem? It's something of particular value. Maybe it's the most valuable or authentic piece in your home. It's something that is perhaps even museum quality. And so it's worthy of the attention, the kind of extended attention that is required to really do restoration. And my goal here is not just to encourage you to restore your historic home, but also to infuse your home with beauty. So in some ways, I mean, this is economical in the sense that you're taking a smaller chunk, and so it's not going to break the bank. On the other hand, I'm asking you, suggesting to you that within that framework, you go whole hog. You do the 9 yards of doing a complete restoration. And what you end up with when you do that is something that is beautiful. Beauty. I like what Picasso said about beauty. Um, Art washes away from the soul the dust of everyday life. It gives you a new perspective on life, and it restores your sense of brilliance of the love of life, the value of life. I also like this other quote: "Your home is a reflection of your soul. Fill it with beauty, and it will feed your spirit." Actually, the home is a symbol of the soul. It's been used by a lot of thinkers to as a symbol of the soul, and it makes sense because we're talking about interiority, and when we talk about the soul, and your home is largely the interior space. If you have something beautiful in your home, you experience it every day, and it has does have an effect on you, and is enriching. For example, let's take a really simple example. I do have a bias. My bias is that I really don't like modernist art, and I think that we live in an increasingly ugly culture where we have replaced beauty with mechanical precision. Our idea of beauty is mechanical precision, like your iPhone, which is very sleek and ordered, but I'm not sure it's would fit my standard of beauty. So, excuse me, in a lot of ways, my affinity to restoration is because of the beauty of the past, which you can find in your bathroom. This original glass on the left-hand side is privacy glass, and it was very common 100 years ago. And some of you may, if you have a historic bungalow, you may actually have this in your bathroom. I do. My bathroom window has this glass, and you can't really tell from the small piece here, but if you see it in the window when the sun is shining through it, it's just incredible movement. It's subtle, but it's a very pleasing and alive kind of design. It's very beautiful. This glass on the right-hand side was supposedly somebody's idea of an imitation or reproduction of that glass on the left-hand side. I don't know what they were smoking when they decided that, but I don't see it. You've probably seen a lot of this glass on the right-hand side. It's everywhere, and that's an interesting thing, though. If you are looking at replacing patterned glass, like in privacy glass in your bathroom, there are alternatives besides this one on the right, which is what the standard design. But there are a wide range of patterned glass that are available. This is a house owned by a couple of friends of mine who are devoted to restoration, and they happen to be artists, so they have the skills to do the work. They bought this Victorian cottage when it was in very dilapidated shape, and one project after another, one bite of the elephant after the other, they methodically restored it and to the beautiful state it is in now. You can see in that picture. Okay, when do you adopt this approach? I'm not going to say are any limitations of when you might, but here are some scenarios. When you can't afford to restore your entire house, or perhaps ever, I mean, you maybe it's not just a long-term project, but just something that is not feasible. But you'd like to restore selected elements that will recover some of the original character of the house. This is a good method for doing that. You take small chunks that will reflect off the whole house and give you a sense of that historical character that attracted you to the house in the first place. Second option is when you have restored most of the interior of your house. Carla, I have this screen sharing button on my screen, and is there any way to get rid of that? Angela, you're just in the middle of my screen.
Um, I, We don't see it, I don't think, for some
All right.
reason.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, if I don't read right, it's because
We'll have
okay,
to do
so
it.
thank you. I'll just live with it. So maybe you have restored most of the interior of your house, but or the public rooms of it, but there are a couple of elements that remain untouched. And one reason you might have not done those because they may require significant attention. And in fact, they may be the crowning elements, the piece de resistance. And I will show you at the end of our talk two pieces that fit into that category. It's the final element that was done that completed the restoration project. A third possibility is you're not interested in full or even partial restoration, but there's one or more architectural gems that you'd like to restore because you know they'll be beautiful. So there's something that stands out that you just really love about your house, and you would want to invest in restoring it. Now, question is, how small is too small? Well, if you're doing this on your own, I suppose there's no limit to how small you could go. And that's an interesting thing to think about. I remember when I first moved into my house, of course, when you move into a house, you have tons of things to do. And I would sit down and I would say, okay, what can I do that will take me 10 minutes? And I got a lot of things done that way because they just took a short period of time. Well, you can get a lot of restoration done that way. For instance, let's say all of your doorknobs have been replaced, but you have got a source for the original doorknobs that were characteristic of your house, and so you just replace those. I had clients who invested in light switch plates and outlet plates. They bought original plates and just changed out all of the outlet plates. And you do these small things, and they have a cumulative effect, and they are beautiful. Now, if you are hiring someone to do a project, there is a size that's too small. So you have to work if you're going to hire someone to do a restoration project for you. You have to work between what you can afford to do or what want the project to do and what is practical and is large enough that the contractor can make money off of the project. That's a real hard thing because you have many of the same costs for a small job that you have for a large job. So smaller jobs are not as easy to do. On the other hand, you want to fend off against project fatigue. It's really easy to get in over your head and take on too large of a project, and then you never finish it, and that's demoralizing because you can't see the end of it. Much better way is to take small projects, and that gives you momentum and encourages you to keep going. So, what are the low-hanging fruit? What are the kind of the simplest things you can do to and the most cost-effective or cheapest kind of restoration project you can do? Everyone knows paint. Paint is the cheapest way to significantly change the ambiance of a room or the character of an object or even a whole building. But how is that going to meet up with these requirements that we set for a restoration project? How to use paint in a way that maximizes these principles, enhancing architectural integrity, being a restoration project rather than just a slapping on a coat of paint, and infusing your home with beauty. Well, every one of the paint companies around has a section of their fan deck that's called historical colors. And if you go in deeper, you can find that some of them have colors that were specific to a whole period. You can find books on this. You can find books on Victorian colors schemes. and um, Sherwin-Williams was the top of the food line around the arts and crafts movement, and so they had put together this deck of historic colors. So here's my house before I bought it. Um, it's very nice, but the windows are nothing, right? So I decided I was going to restore the windows. Now, again, what does restoration require? Not just to slap on a coat of paint, but to ideally strip it down to bare wood and repair it and then build it up again. What that does, whenever you strip off paint and repaint in an old house, you recover the profiles, and oftentimes they're in excellent condition. And the thing that was so ugly was the layers of paint. So if you just strip something down to bare wood and repaint it, you really get a lot of bang for your buck for that. Well, I of course went the whole 9 yards because I do restoration, so I took everything down and broke it down to bare wood and took all the glass out and um, repaired the sashes and the storm windows and the wood framing and put it all back together and came with this. This color is called oak moss, and it is from this chart, from the arts and crafts style chart. Now, you might say, well, that looks good because yellow and green go together. In fact, that's kind of a classic color combination. An olive green has a lot of yellow in it, and so if you combine it with yellow brick, it looks good. But I think it's much more than that. Colors are particular to the period. Every year the color experts come up with a color of the year. And so colors follow the changes, transformations in color in culture. And so if you want to invoke a particular period, use the colors that were germane to that period. I happen to think that doing so is the best way to enhance the building because it's kind of mysterious, but it fits. It seems like it belongs. The white just doesn't do anything. The green makes those windows pop. And because those windows are probably the most distinctive thing about my house, they fit this category of being an architectural gem. And I did the same thing on the interior. Here's the interior of the house before I bought it. Notice the 1950s George Jetson pendant lights. Those are really nice, but they don't go with a bungalow. Um, as does not that powder blue paint and the white trim on the trim. And so this is what my house looks like, or my room looks like now. I'm in the same room. You can see that a couple of projects I've done. One is to strip down the wood to bare wood, and then um, I actually chose a stain color that is consistent with arts and crafts style. Jeff Jewett is the guru of wood refinishing, and he has a whole article on arts and crafts paint for or stain formulas. So I chose one of those stain formulas and modified it a bit to suit my space, and refinished the windows with a period appropriate stain and varnish. The varnish itself is appropriate. I hadn't thought about mentioning this, but you don't want to use polyurethane in a historic house. Polyurethane is plastic. It does not belong in a historic house, which would have had a resin-based varnish. So what I have on here is a tung oil varnish, which is remarkably appearance is remarkably close to an oil and wax finish, and so it really enhances the wood and the give invokes the period. But what I intended first of all in showing you this picture is to show you the wall color, which is bird's eye maple, and it is drawn from this same color deck. Now, it takes a little getting used to because our eyes are kind of fixated on our contemporary culture, and you go everywhere and you find these bright colors. The colors, the arts and crafts style, were more muted. They were much more organic colors. They're not this high-tech coloring we have today. Um, um, but I find that it really is a relaxing. You notice that I have lots of plants in my living room. Well, that's consistent with an arts and crafts style because germane to that style was the intent to soften the edge between the outside and the inside. So bringing plants to the inside um, makes sense. Now, I do not have a green thumb. I just have windows that have a lot of sunlight, and so that's what inspired me to start collecting plants. But what this led to was another project, and here is a kind of a limited um, um, restoration project that you could take on, or something like this. I decided that what I wanted, if I was going to have all these plants in my living room, I was also going to have arts and crafts. Um, oh, I'm going the wrong way. Arts and crafts plant stands. So I have started collecting them. I go on eBay and Facebook Marketplace nearly daily. What's for sale, and find these historic original arts and crafts plant stands. This one I bought from an art dealer, and it's really nice because if you look at the room, see, it's in the center of the windows. It really kind of anchors the whole room. So that's a nice one. I like this one because it's a funky one, and it's just fun. Now that one does need a little bit of work because it's the finish is worn down, but wabi sabi, appreciation for old things. Now, this is interesting because this is not this is a new plant stand. If I were a purist, I would only buy um, antique plant stands, and mostly I do. But I liked the style of this one, and it's tall. And it so it reaches up over the wall. But it is consistent with the arts and crafts style. However, I will want to at one point refinish it because that is not an arts and crafts stain color. That's a Scandinavian stain color. And so I will strip it down and do something that is closer to the trim color in the windows. So let's look at wood. How to recover natural wood incrementally. This was really the inspiration for this webinar for me was uh, um, I have customers, clients all the time who have their whole house has been painted over, and they know, of course, that beneath all that paint is beautiful wood. Um, there are lots of reasons why they got painted. For one thing, in the 1930s, there was a kind of a craze. It was a trendy thing to paint all your woodwork. And you have to understand that they were in a different situation than we're in. They had all this beautiful oak and birch and mahogany wood because it was plentiful. And eventually they got tired of it. And so they thought to paint over it. Well, that's horror to us because now that wood is so valuable, it's so rare, and especially because of its age. So we see it differently. But it's a very big task to restore all of the woodwork in your house. So how can you do this incrementally? How can you get some of that natural wood back without breaking the bank? And so you have some of that beauty of that wood, and yet you haven't done everything. Well, here's one way, especially with windows. And this is where I suggest you start. If you're going to restore your windows, consider not having them repainted. So a part of a good restoration of windows involves taking them down to bare wood. Well, then you have them stained instead of repainted. Here's a bungalow where we did just that for a client. And is a stain color that's appropriate to the era. But you don't break the bank because you don't have to do the whole window frame, and just it just kind of snowballs on you. Then you're getting into doing the baseboard and everything else, and it gets overwhelming. So if you do it incrementally, so this could be a style that just is on its own. It looks fine. It's a completely acceptable aesthetic style, but it also could be the first stage of eventually restoring the frames as well. Now, here's a house, a client of ours who had these beautiful, very distinctive windows, and they wanted us to restore the windows. Um, our restoration process, can just do the sashes and the window jambs and leave the frames. That's not included in a basic window restoration project. So they were intending that we would paint them again. But I looked around their house and I noticed that they had this stairwell where they had partially refinished it. And in fact, this stain color is the same color that's on the floor. You can see it there in that picture. It's a Jacobean color. And so I proposed to them that we restore the windows, just the sashes, to match that Jacobean color. The impact was pretty dramatic. You walk in this house and they tell me everyone who walks in the house notices the windows and comments on them because they stand out so well. And so this is a way that it really worked. There's that room with before we did anything. There's the room afterwards. See how they stand out, but they also fit. They use a very contemporary style in this house. They did maintain a lot of the original character, but they also upgraded a lot of things. And this was because this process of just restoring the sashes is a more contemporary kind of style. Notice that in this picture we have also restored the doors. Um, there are, and that is whereas I encourage clients, if they're going to do anything, that they start with their windows, and then the next stage I say is work on your doors. So restore just your doors. Don't restore the door frames, just as we've done here, but just restore the doors. Well, here's a situation where we actually did restore all of the woodwork. But I show this picture because many of you have this kind of beautiful wood hidden between those 20 layers of paint. And if you were to strip it down, you'd be amazed at what the beautiful wood is beneath those. I've done this for clients and just stripped down their doors, and they can't believe the quality of the wood. This is curly birch, and it's common in Chicago. In fact, a lot around the turn of the century, birch was the wood that was most available, and they would stain it a dark reddish brown. You probably see it everywhere, this dark reddish brown. And that was on purpose. They were trying to imitate dark mahogany. And that's why it's everywhere in Chicago. Well, strip it down and you find there's beautiful wood beneath it. So I suggest a sequence. If you're going to restore the wood trim, and you can stop at any point in this, and you will still have a beautiful house that has recovered some of that warm woodwork without breaking the bank. Start with restoring the window sashes, but not the frames. But that is an extensive project because if you're going to do that, I do recommend that you do a proper restoration of the windows, and that's doing everything. And it is something that most homeowners don't want to take on themselves. So it is something that you might have to hire out to do. The next increment you can do is to restore the wood doors, but not the frames. You could move on to the next stage is in restoring the window frames and the doors. And then the fourth stage would be to restore the baseboards. And fifth, finally, the crown molding. You leave the crown molding and ceiling beams for last because they are a bitch to, excuse my French, to strip because it's all stripping overhead, over your head. But you can see that there is a way to progressively break down a window restoration, trim restoration process and do it in stages, or you can just do part of the stages. There are lots of different ways you can enhance the architectural integrity of your home by certain things that you add in or sustain. And this is a house where they've retained a lot of the original character, including, notice the lamp, which is a period lamp. They have period lamps throughout their house. This is their dining room. I really wanted to steal this. I just love this lamp. It's a beautiful lamp. Well, you might guess I don't really care for modern lamp styles. But if you were to do only one thing to try to recover some of the architectural integrity of your home, change your lamps, buy antique lamps. They had a lot of, in this house, they had a lot of very distinctive or original things, notably the transom window operator, which is original. I'd never seen one like that before. That's obviously from the era original. In my own house, I'm attempting to do that. You can see I have a arts and crafts table or floor lamp there, and the two lamps closest to the windows are period lamps. The one in the foreground isn't. It's another eBay in process to find these and find them at affordable rates. This is my hallway. And you see this beautiful pendant light. And since I'm showing you my hallway, I have to explain my hallway. Now, this is not for everyone, but when I moved in, this was what the hallway looked like. And I hate that wallpaper. It has those metallic lines in it. It's just god awful. So I started ripping it off. And when I did so, I found these layers of four or five very old wall coverings. And I decided that that was worth saving. So I peeled off as much from the backside of the blue paper, as much of those original wallpaper, and pieced them together in this kind of collage and varnished over it with a flat varnish to make it lay flat. And that's my foyer, a tribute to the past. So let's look at something that's more involved, incremental and selective restoration of a very valuable architectural gem. This is a built-in cabinet, and it looks like wedding cake to me, like thick frosting on it. Well, that's what it looked like after we were finished. Um, But it didn't happen just by ripping off all the paint. Remember, restoration attends to the whole thing and recovers the integrity of the whole object. So this required a lot of other work. For instance, the mirror had delaminated from the wall. You can see that it's 1 inch pulled away from the wall. And then the frame for the window is also pulled away from the cabinet. So it was about to fall into behind the cabinet, actually. So we had to glue it back together and then put it in a shim to reattach to the wall. Another detail we had here was the corbels that I have composition. It's in the early Victorian era, they did a lot of hand carving. As labor got more expensive, they realized they couldn't continue all this hand carving. And so they started to make forms and make these facsimile of hand carvings. And so we had in that cabinet there are these. So we had to replace all those that were degraded. Fortunately, we found an acanthus leaf that was the right size for those little corbels. And we replaced all of those. So there you have it. Beautiful quarter sawn wood. How could anyone paint over that? I just can't understand that. There's what it looks like before and after. Here's an architecture. I'm running out of time, so I am just going to go through quickly. Um, Here's a way to enhance architectural integrity. You've seen this decorative plaster with so many coats of paint that you can hardly see any of the detail. Well, we stripped them all down and I didn't repaint it. Instead, you see what detail was recovered by taking it down to bare plaster. But instead of painting them, I took an antiquing glaze and just glazed over it. And of course, the glaze fills the crevices more. And then I put on 2 coats of an acrylic matte wax. And here's what it looks like when it was done. It looks like ivory. It's really beautiful in the space. Now, some crowning elements I'll just show you quickly. Here is an arts and crafts house by a known architect, named architect. Everything in the house is authentically arts and craft. Why would anyone ever have painted this fireplace? Arts and crafts style values organic materials and um, um, brick is more organic than paint. And so we stripped it down, stripped all the framing around it, and this is what it looks like when it's done. And that really was the crowning point of the room. It was the last thing that had to be done to bring back the original character. Here's another, a Frank Lloyd Wright house that we had already restored all of the windows in this house, except for this one. Understandably, it's got 60 different lights. And so it was quite a task to do this. So this was the crowning achievement, the last thing we did. There it is intact on the building. It's in a stairwell, so we can't really get a very good direct picture of it. But there you can see walking up the stairs, the beautiful stain or window in that stairwell. And there it is looking down from the top. So there are lots of ways to do incremental selective restoration, and hopefully this has given you some things to think about and maybe stirred your imagination and given you ideas of things that you can do in your own home. So Carla, if we can move on to questions. You're muted, or
Sorry.
at least,
I was going to say, you can unshare, but also sometimes people like you might want to refer to your presentation for certain questions. So you can also leave the presentation up while we're speaking.
okay.
Make it
Yeah,
easier
that I'll
sometimes.
just leave it up and we'll see.
So, you did get laughs at your elephant joke, and people did love your hallway. Um, So one person asked, and it's a good question. So, if your house already has vinyl windows that have been replaced, how, they asked if they could be painted or something could be done to have them look any better. But yeah, what do you do in a case where it's like that's already been done and it's totally cost prohibitive to have wood replacements put in? What are your suggestions?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because it can be reverted. It's very expensive, but you could. One option is to do reproduction windows. The if they're double hung windows, all of the structure is there, but of course it is cost prohibitive. I there's not much you can do with those vinyl windows because if you try to paint them, it just peels off, and it's not. It really doesn't. Work. And so I think the good thing to do is to pour your energy into other projects that are going to give you more bang for the buck without costing an arm and leg.
Improve your plant game around those windows.
Yeah, yeah. Put plants. Yeah,
Right.
cover them up with plants and
Right.
arts and crafts style linens and drapery
Hmm.
or whatever style your house is.
What are and I know this is a little hard to do, but what are the approximate costs for restoring windows that are similar to yours?
Oh, um, yeah, it's really hard
No.
to say because they're so different. I'm gonna say around 1,500.
And those are extra long windows. And are those casements?
Yeah, those are
Oh.
casement windows,
Mhm.
and yeah, that would be taking them from a painted condition to a natural or a stained condition. It'd be
Mhm.
less work if you're just returning them to a painted condition.
Yeah, and those have a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of detail in that. You also use the word lights, and I'm not sure people know that lights is referring to each glass pane in a
Oh
window.
yeah, yeah, that's
So
right.
just a terminology thing. Yeah, that I think can be confusing sometimes. So the more lights also in a window, the more glass panes in a window, the more expensive it's going to be as well. So let's see. If woodwork is already stained and finished, but there are paint drips on it, is there a way to carefully remove the paint drips? And also somebody just asked how you strip paint from old wood, like if you can recommend products, I assume, and if
Yeah.
there's a general method you use.
Well, paint drips. You can try. There is a antique finishing removal made by Minwax that we use a lot just to take off. It's a very slow acting stripping agent, and it softens the top layers. And sometimes you can use that to soften that paint and then scrub it a little bit, and you're going to take off a layer of varnish, and you're going to have to recoat it. But that's one possible way to do that. You have to be careful. It can easily burn through the stain, but that's one way you'd want to experiment. Sometimes you can take a sharp chisel. If they're just big paint chips, you can take a sharp chisel and get them off. Um, yeah, those are the two ways that come to mind. And in terms of stripping, well, I do oftentimes hire out the finish removal process, but when we do it on our own, we start with a heat gun. Um, and we use infrared heat guns, which are less toxic than because if you create paint fumes, there can be lead paint fumes there. But the infrared do not heat up as fast as the conventional heat gun, and they also don't blow the paint around like because conventional heat guns are like hair dryers. So we remove with the bulk of the paint with that, and then we go to one of these new stripping agents. We prefer Citrus Strip, which is available in um, um, Home Depot. There's another product, Soft Strip. Soft Strip's a little bit harder to work with, but is also a safe stripping agent. These safe strippers do not go through multiple layers of paint. And that's why you have to start with the heat gun. Another way to go, though, is to do the peel away system, where you peel away is you put layers of you soak it up and cover it up with paper and leave it for 24, 48 or longer hours. You do have to do a test on that because sometimes the peel away reacts in a strange way to wood and it discolors it. So you want to be really careful to do a test piece. That peel away is very good on stripping brick. We used that on stripping that brick fireplace.
Um, so some of these might be sort of already answered. There's two questions kind of go together. One is the original stain in my sunroom casements are a faux finish with with oak grain. How would you approach restoring them? Well, maybe let's just start with that.
Well, the first question to ask is, did they do a good job? Is it
Yeah,
something that you want to preserve? If not, then the thing to do is to strip it down to bare wood and recover the real wood. Uh, um, yeah, oftentimes it was a DIY project and it was done very quickly, so it may not be high caliber. If you want a name for the next cocktail party you attend, it's called faux bois. That's what fake wood is, the
wow.
French term
Yeah.
for it.
The previous owners in my home put a gloss, I assume poly finish on all of the woodwork. How do you suggest I tone it down?
Um,
Yeah, is there a way to sort of buff it or something, or will that?
well, if it's polyurethane, that's just one reason I hate polyurethane is because you can't do anything with it. It just is it doesn't you get high and low spots and when you try to buff it. So I would say you can sand it aggressively and use a lower sheen varnish on top of it. It's a little bit much to go from a high gloss to a satin finish because um, um, well, really, you don't want to go the other way. You don't want to go with a satin finish and then put gloss on top. But yeah, you actually could just sand it aggressively and apply a coat of satin varnish.
Hopefully it's not on all of the woodwork, really.
Okay.
That's lots a lot of sanding. Um, let's see, we have painted staircases in our three-story row house we want to restore. The staircases were already painted. I'm thinking about stripping the paint myself to save on labor costs, then hiring a professional to sand, stain, and repair the wood if needed. Do you have any tips on do's and don'ts when taking on this type of a project?
Well, pay attention to project fatigue,
Mhm.
because that's a big project, and maybe you want to break it down into a smaller units and decide that if you want to take it all on yourself. Um, uh, floor finishing, including stairs, is something we don't do because the floor finishing industry is a whole industry of itself, and we can't be competitive on pricing because it requires such machinery. It's a dedicated process. So yeah, I think the best thing I can say is do a test piece to make sure that you really like that wood underneath and it's worth enough to strip it all down. And then you'd still go about the same way using the heat guns and stripping down. Getting the bulk of the paint off with the heat gun and then moving to a safe stripping agent for the final stuff.
Um, how do you rejuvenate a varnish? Can you just varnish on top of that?
Yes, we often do that with, and we use that. I don't know the name of it right now, but Minwax makes this. It's called a furniture renewer or something like that, and it's a stripping agent that's very slow acting, so it doesn't take a lot off at a time. So you can often just wipe down the woodwork with that finish, which will take the top layer off, and that's the gritty, dirty layer that's got all the dust in it, and then just recoat it. Now, if you have a shellac finish, if you have an old finish, then you can use denatured alcohol to soften that and then just put a fresh coat of varnish. Yeah, it's amazing what that can do if your varnish is intact but just lacking in luster. That's a really effective way to bring it back.
That's cool. Yeah. Are there any products that help restore original stained wood that has not been painted? I have original woodwork throughout, but it needs some love as it looks like alligator skin.
That's shellac. That's what you have a shellac varnish. Shellac, when it ages, it gets that alligatoring or pebbling. You sometimes see it as pebbles. Um, well, the good news is that's the easiest finishing material to strip out. The hardest one is polyurethane, but shellac. And you can, it's difficult to do, but you can amalgamate it, take denatured alcohol and try to even it out. But I don't think you're going to get rid of that alligatoring that way. I think you probably, if you don't like that, some people like that. That is an aged patina that some people appreciate. But take denatured alcohol and smooth out as much of the surface as you can, and then recoat it with either shellac or with a resin-based varnish.
Just a little follow-up from the faux finish that she says she thinks the oak grain faux finish is original, but the owner before me coated it with the poly and that's what's peeling. So she doesn't want to mess it up. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
ugh.
yeah, that's delicate.
Yeah, especially if they use poly, because polyurethane, you can't strip it out. Oftentimes you have to scrape it.
Mm.
So I don't know how you would. Well, I guess if it's delaminating, that's one thing. Then it wasn't properly prepared. But you could just try to sand down the polyurethane and to give it tooth and try putting a fresh coat of varnish on top of that. But the delaminating where it's peeling off, you would want to scrape off as much of that. Um, so yeah, you don't want to take the varnish off because that's going to take there's no way to preserve the faux bois without or to remove the finishing material without affecting the faux graining.
What does bois mean?
Well, it's French for
Bois.
wood, faux bois,
Oh,
Bois.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, wood. I knew faux, but I did not know
And
bois.
faux marbre,
Okay,
it's Marbre. It's not faux marble, faux marbre.
got it.
Um,
Mhm.
anyway,
And so we're done with all those. I just had one quick question before I let you go. Was there ever a situation where, 1910s and 20s and all of these buildings where they did originally paint the interior woodwork of things and windows?
ah, yeah, I'm not, I certainly, I don't think in the arts and crafts style, but
Yeah.
turn of the century,
So
that,
either.
they did just about everything. So I would say yes, there are situations where they would have painted the woodwork. Um,
But you
yeah,
had arts and crafts, which makes sense.
yeah.
which is most of our two flats, of course. Well, it's really all of them, 2 and 3 flats from that era too. So yeah, I just wondered, somebody asked me and I was like, I thought that I knew that for sure, but I had never actually really interrogated that, question. So, okay, well, that makes sense though. Um, all right, we are past time, so we should let you go. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I would encourage people to go on oakbrothers.net. There's some beautiful pictures of stuff that they've worked on. You can go on our website, and if you click on awards and you look at our Treehouse Award winners, you can look. A lot of people like to look at, the bungalows that were done for inspiration as well. A lot of those were interior jobs that were done, sometimes very economically as well, to do the kinds of things that Jeff's talking about tonight, where you have a budget, but you want to spend it on just one little area or something that really makes your house sort of pop. So yeah, have fun, look around. I love this presentation. Thanks, Jeff. It's a lot of really great ideas on how to do things. I'm going to up my plant game in 2025. And I need to paint. I'm prepping. So yeah, really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. Have a great night. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.